Welcome to Feminized. It's time for a show that turns the spotlight on the powerful women shaping cannabis culture. The cannabis industry is on fire and women are sparking it up. If you like the show, please subscribe. You can also subscribe to the Feminized podcast with Liz Grow on YouTube and Instagram. The future is feminized.
Hey sis.
You're now listening to the Feminized podcast.
Welcome to the Feminized podcast. Today, I'm so excited to feature Tiffany Chin, co-founder of Casa Verde Capital
and Death Row Cannabis
and Leaps by Snoop. Welcome to Feminized, Tiffany. It's so amazing to have you.
You glad to be here. Yeah, thank you for having me, Liz.
So before we hit record, before we started the episode, you were saying to me that you felt that there have been some women on the Feminized podcast who are awesome. And, you know, I don't know if you don't mind saying that, maybe mentioning that again. It just felt really good to hear from somebody of your caliber.
Yeah. So, I've obviously been following you and seeing who you have featured on your podcast and on your pages. One of my favorites I think you just did very recently was Sandy from Wana, because Wana is those brands that's just like it. They've been in the market for so long. They started out doing, just edibles, and now they're getting into different things. And it's really great to see them go internationally, go into different territories. And also, this is another Asian woman that I kind of look up to. And it's really great to see someone who looks like me at a high level doing really amazing things with cannabis. And out of all, that's just one woman that I've seen you guys do a feature on, and she's great.
Oh, thank you for that. I love hearing that, because that's the purpose. It's a place for women in cannabis, and we look different and we come from different places and spaces, but our experiences are so similar, whether, we've come from China or whether we've come from, Southern California, or East Coast, or, God, who else? I've just had a beautiful, I think, tapestry of women who've been on the show, and I love it.
And I feel so honored to be one of those women. So thank you so much for doing this with me, and I'm so glad to be here today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's just dive right in, Tiffany. I would just love to hear about your journey. Where did you start to get to be at this place?
So I after I graduated from college, I went to school for business. I did what a lot of people at my school do, which is go into consulting or banking. And my consulting focus was, get this, actuarial, accounting, and finance. So dull. Yeah.
When will you die? Basically, isn't that death math?
And this is the funniest thing, but the most exciting project I worked on there was for the Department of Labor. So extremely, compared to what I'm doing now, very dull. And throughout the time that I was there, less than a year, I had been putting my feelers out into in California and figuring out how I could move out into the Los Angeles area and work in entertainment, right? And
where were you coming from?
From Philadelphia. So I was Philly. Yeah, and all that stuff. And I got an internship, and I think what happened was the individual who manages that boutique management firm, he didn't see a lot of resumes come across his desk that from my university, which happened to be his university. And so he was like, let's just hire her, bring her out. I became an intern. I was making like $1,500 a month. Like, I moved all my stuff out here. Wow. And I was not making much, right? But I was doing all the intern stuff, right? Cleaning tables, making sure that we had enough water for everybody when guests came in. And one of those individuals was Snoop Dogg, right? So every week or so, and this was, I started in February or March. So he would come in every week and he would shoot his show GGN, or he called it Double G News. So it's a little play on CNN. And after he would leave a lot of cannabis crumbs, like cannabis, and I would just kind of pocket them and put them in my bag and then go home and smoke them. And for some reason around that time, it was 2012, 2013, I didn't feel the need to get a medical card. Things hadn't gone recreationally legal in California just yet. And so I guess I was paranoid, didn't want to be on any lists or anything. Looking back, it's very silly. And then May or June came around and Snoop went on his summer tour. So he wasn't coming in anymore. My was
Snoop was your plug. Oh my God.
it wasn't even like full nubs. It was just like a scratch. It's
Totally though.
And so I ended up, well, a coworker of mine was like, hey, my boyfriend is in a band with this guy who grows cannabis, and he grows in the gray market, but he sells by the pound to dispensaries. He'll hook it up for a homie though. So let's figure it out. I'll connect you to. And this is actually, I'm telling you the story of how I actually met my husband. So I get in his car, like
Better and better.
like how it goes. And you know when you're sitting next to someone side by side, it's really awkward to look at them because you're like turning your head 90 degrees. And so it's like, so I get a glimpse of him because I'm in the passenger seat, and I'll roll my eyes because I'm like, wow, I have not brushed my hair. I have no makeup on. I don't even like, just give me my stuff and here's your money. Bye. Right.
Right.
Three months later, I hit him up again. And I'm like, hey, I ran out. I'd like some more. Also, I don't know if you remember what I look like, but would you go out for a drink sometime? And yeah, it's funny. Everyone's always like, wow, that's crazy. So you hit him up first. I was like, well, think of it from his perspective. If he were to hit on me and ask me to go out with him and I said no, that's a client off his list, right?
Right. He's not gonna take that chance.
Exactly. He's a very intelligent man and didn't want to potentially ruin that type of relationship. And it became so much more. And now we have a 2.5-year-old together. We've been married for 6 years. So it's married for 6 years. Wow. We're not very big anniversary people, so I guess we just forgot about our 5th anniversary. You know.
Oh my God.
Now that's how I met my husband. He is now a biologist at a nonprofit called Tree People, and I'm running all of Snoop's cannabis ventures. So it's just a really great way of how, like, I got in with Snoop, but then also I have all of this knowledge about the gray market, the legacy market.
Yes.
As you know, operating a smaller indoor grow and understanding what goes into growing the flower, cutting it down, bucking, trimming, drying, curing, all that's flushing. And I even got my hands dirty and like helped, do some trimming here and there just to speed things up for him when the seasonal, 8 to 12 weeks of harvest came down, right?
Yeah. So he was growing the product.
Yeah.
And you as you got to know him and the product and your relationship blossomed, if you will, haha, pun always intended. You got to learn the business. And would you say that you kind of helped him run the business? I mean, just given your background, I mean, how could you not?
I was definitely more on a branding side. Like if you understand certain portions of the business, the way that Snoop and I run things is that we're more of an asset light, right? Like because Snoop's background in history, he has shied away from actually himself applying for licenses in the cannabis, right? I mean, he has, of course, heard all that stuff, and he doesn't want to necessarily have his name in there and have all his background. It would make sense. I don't necessarily want that stuff either. I don't want to be a license holder. So what he would rather do is identify individuals and grows that have grown amazing flower that he has tried and approves of and wants to work with them to create those products as well as more innovative products that he knows that he would smoke. So some very interesting development that has happened recently that, I haven't really told other people yet is he is normally a blunt smoker, right? And as the years gone by, like I've seen him roll his blunts and they've become a little skinnier. So I see that he is wanting a higher tobacco ratio to his cannabis, right? But the new Death Row 2-gram glass tip diamond infused pre-rolls, he loves those. And they're not blunts. There's no tobacco on them. And he loves them. So I think he said to me, if we get that right, I will move to papers. I will move to pre-roll. I will move to cones and not smoke blunts anymore. So that's very interesting. And I'm kind of excited to see him do that because, he's 51 and he has been on a health kick lately. And I'm loving seeing him. I'm sure you follow him on Instagram. He's always working now.
Yes.
Eating good food and not, he's not like snacking as much. So it's really great to see him also incorporate those health forward initiatives in his smoking life.
Yes.
It's really great to see. Yeah.
You you're it feels like your relationship with Snoop is similar to that relationship that Elizabeth Hogan has with Willie in his brand. Oh my God, this is very cool. Because you do see Snoop. I mean, Snoop, you want him to stay healthy, but also smoking is very much a part of who he is and his identity and, in so many ways in his life. So that's interesting. Yeah, that you're seeing things from that perspective. And then you're able to put a product out in the market that, maybe will help the rest of us kind of get back on the tobacco.
Yeah, exactly. He's not like still interested in tobacco. I know that we have Death Row vapes, which it was a nicotine thing that we did and a deal that we did recently. He loves those. They're like the little flavored. I think I have one right here. I can show you so that's what they look like.
Oh my gosh. Those are so cool.
So this is in 2014, right? And then they were like, hey, we're going to legalize in Colorado and Washington. And then very soon after, Canada legalized medical nationally, and then after recreational nationally. And so when that happened, Snoop's manager at the time, who was my boss, he was looking around the office and was like, I don't see anyone who could do this job other than you, Tiffany, because there's nobody else who smokes like you smoke every day. And I was like, yes, I do. And he was like, okay. And also like, you are very, I don't want to say like buttoned up, but he was very like, you have sense about you, right? We don't see that a lot. There's no one else in our office and there's no one else I trust to manage that. Right. So I was like, okay. I was that first being like, am I pigeonholing myself? Am I potentially getting myself into an area that might not have a future, which sounds so silly now, saying that out loud.
Right.
So once we started looking into the Colorado market. We did look into the Washington market, but as I'm sure you know, the Washington market, because it is not allowable to be fully integrated vertically, the deal terms would have been very difficult to manage because we would have had to work with multiple different partners along the same supply chain. But in Colorado, we found an amazing partner in LiveWell. And then in Canada, we found an amazing partner in Canopy. So with Canopy, the story is really interesting because I actually cold emailed, I think it was hi@tweed.com, right? That was, right? Because they were Tweed first.
Yeah. Wow, that's taking it back.
Yeah, and the president at the time, Mark Zeklin, he told me this later after we met. He was like, I literally thought this was a joke. I thought this was a spam email. I did not believe it was real until I looked up the management firm. I looked up who you were and I looked up who your boss was and I realized you guys were the real deal. I was like, okay, so let's make this happen. I flew up to Ottawa. It was like November. It was freezing. We grabbed lunch. We had this really awkward, 45-minute drive together. Mark and I are very good friends now, so it doesn't matter. But we went to go see the facility at the Hershey plant, which is where they had taken over the chocolate factory.
Yeah.
I think there were 5 or 10 plants in like pots. And so it wasn't even like a full-fledged operation, but I could tell, I knew that the investment was there. Yeah. And we had struck what I believe was the largest cannabis licensing deal of all time. I mean, I do believe that's the case. Yeah. And
the applause, baby. Tiffany Chin, the largest cannabis licensing deal of all time in that moment. How did that feel?
When it was great because I knew that prior to that, nothing like this had been done. Yeah. And knowing where I am now, knowing what I know now in 2023, I know that nothing has been done like that since. So it was quite amazing. It
feels good. I'm going to slow that down, okay, in the playback. All right. And just to allow people to maybe we'll just make a social clip of just that so I can use it as my alarm clock.
And so it was such an experience because in the United States, things were not federally regulated. So, we were able to do colorful or really cool artwork and patterns and fun naming conventions on our products. But in Canada, when the recreational side out, they're like, you can't have the word Snoop in there. And I was like, well, it's LBS then. So they're like, you can't have more than one color on the packaging. I was like, okay, so white and orange, white and Like, what are we doing? And it was just really restrictive. But because we were in the medical market before the recreational hit, we kind of got grandfathered in terms of brand recognition. So he's by Snoop in the medical market, and then we became LBS in the recreational market. And
That's great. That's
it's great, and people still understood it as Snoop's brand. But my inclination at the very beginning and the onset of the brand. Oh, I'm going to give you a little bit more fun behind the scenes nuggets. We originally wanted
collecting them like Snoop's nuggets.
we originally wanted the brand to be LBC, right? Because we were like, nah, LBC Long Beach, Cali, it's easy. Snoop always wears LBC clothing, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And you know, the way that certain acronyms get retconned, we were like, okay, Leafs by Calvin, because that's his name. That's his real name, like his first name, right?
Right.
And every time we shopped it around, we did some focus groups and focus studies and stuff like that. Everyone they told me two things. They're like, I'm thinking of underwear, Calvin Klein, or that little boy with that little tiger. So Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, wow.
So we were like, okay, this is not going to work, right? And on the other side of things, outside of just consumers, we were talking to potential licensees. And they were like, no, we need the word Snoop or dog in there, or both. Otherwise, it is not worth it to us. So we're like, well, I immediately was like, we got to call it LBS because that's the acronym or abbreviation for pounds. And I was like,
oh my God, I didn't even get that. What?
And the funny thing is, like, people, like, if you listen to some of his songs, like, the one I'm thinking of right now is the one with 50 Cent called Major Distribution, where he's like, he's like moving pounds, I like smoke pounds, looking at the caddy on the showroom floor. Like, there's just a lot of references, and and because it's an automatic way to reference weight and how much he goes through. So the other thing was, in Canada, like, people were like, is this going to be an issue? Because they use metric in Canada. They don't use pounds, ounces, and everything. And I was like, right. Ask any legacy consumer, grower, anything. They still operate. And I'm not talking just about Canada. I'm talking about around the world.
Right.
Still weigh and like the old school, they still go by ounces. They still go by eighths. They still go by pounds. And you can tell because in Canada, everything is sold in 1 grams, 3.5 grams, 7 grams, 14 and 28. And why? Because that's how much it is for an ounce. So,
right. Oh my God. Brilliant. Just the numbers. It's like Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Like, it's great. It's just, it hits on all points. Right. And you know, that may be why, that's, I'm sure, in large part of the reason why the brand is so successful, because many celebrity plays in cannabis haven't panned out. And they've been disappointing because, you know, it feels like they're really putting all the weight and pressure on the celebrity identity.
Right. Well, that's actually, I'm really glad you mentioned that because LBS actually is not in market anymore. And it hasn't been in market for about 2 years. And people always ask me what happened, right? And there were cool things that happened. One of them was that, you're gonna love this, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the National Hockey League actually came after us for trademark infringement. Which, the first word of our brand was spelled LEAFS, which is obviously an intentional, grammatically incorrect pluralization of the word leaf.
Right.
They argue that was very distinct and there was nothing else like in the world that had that word. And then also our actual logo was they thought it was potentially confusion, like would create confusion between the two brands. We ended up doing our own like actual testing and market analysis. And I think we interviewed like 100 or 1,000 people. I think only less than 2% of people had any confusion. And so that was one of the big reasons why we kind of had to bring the brand back. Here's some other reasons that I will disclose to you off the record, but sure, yearly on the podcast. So as that chapter has closed, Snoop, as I'm sure you know, early last year acquired Death Row Records.
Yes.
And he wants to build Death Row Records into, and I'm not talking about just cannabis, right? As a clothing brand and company, as a music studio and record label, as a a place for any type of artist to come do business, right? Whether it's creative or products or anything like that. He wants to build it into this big company and behemoth of like a 90s kind of staple, right? Back into the 2020s and beyond. And so it just made sense for us to create a cannabis line with Death Row because, people kind of saw cannabis as like the devil's weed, like the devil's lettuce, right? Back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I guess 80s, just say no. And then in the 90s, there was like a lot of, especially with the hip hop movement, and I would say really credit that to Death Row and the record label.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No question. You think Death Row and you think cannabis.
Yeah.
You think weed. Like there's no, you can't separate the two.
Dre's album, The Chronic, right? Like,
There's
so much around Death Row and like having cannabis as a good time, fun type of product as opposed to a dangerous or it's bad for you or you're going to die if you smoke it or you're going to, all those things from the 80s and everything. So bringing that in, it just made sense for, the brand and for Death Row to come out with a branded cannabis line.
I think that's incredible. Just the learning. I'm sure you had so much just wisdom from the experience that you had with LBS that it only makes sense to continue in the cannabis space. I mean, because you can't, it's just like, it's like cannabis and Snoop, the two just go hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't want to do it in the, you want to do it the right way. And so Death Row Cannabis, oh my God. So talk to me about the launch in December. How was the response from the market?
It was really great. So we did a very limited launch. We started in California, and my two guys that are working on sourcing and doing the actual production, AK and Shaggy, are amazing at what they do. AK is a very well-known legacy grower. He is amazing at what he does. He is also actually the, I would say, director, if not VP of cultivation at TRP, which is the entity that owns the retail stores for cookies in California. And Shaggy has been with Snoop for 15 years. He's been his engineer, sound engineer, and mixer. And because of his shifts, he takes the night shift. So when Snoop is around and there's no one else around and they're hanging out in the studio together, together. So they end up talking about a lot of things around cannabis, growing cannabis, the flavors, the highs, the different ways to consume.
Yeah.
The real deep knowledge of how Snoop thinks when it comes to cannabis. So these two men are invaluable to my team because of the history. Like, I've been with Snoop for 11 years. So it's not, but these guys have great experience and inside knowledge. And that like they've smoked with Snoop, but it's been for work, not for pleasure. So
Right.
It's a different way and like vibe of thinking and have these guys. Obviously the reaction has been crazy because people are like, oh, is this his new brand? Right. And we have to keep telling them, yes, Snoop and Death Row, Snoop owns Death Row, but this is not a Snoop specific brand, right? Like, I don't necessarily want to say Dre or Tupac, but like there are other artists on the roster. There are other musicians, there are other fine artists, there are other A&R people, managers, people songwriters, right, that get credit for what they've done for the legacy of Death Row that may end up getting featured with different product lines or different strains or different, like if there's a woman who is an amazing artist and she's like, I hate indica, I can only vape and I can only do sativas, maybe we'll come out with a product that she is able to stand behind and then be like, this is my Death Row Records, my Death Row Cannabis vape, right? And it's about her, right? It's not about us, right? And so we're creating this platform for all these artists and all these, not just artists, but like talented people.
Yes.
Get the recognition that they're due.
Oh, yeah.
Secret soon. I think you'll be seeing it soon, but Harry O and JP, John Payne, who co-founded Death Row Records and have been with the company since its inception and know where all the skeletons are hidden and all that stuff, right? They're working with them and figuring out what we can do with them and their legacy as well. So there's a lot of things bubbling and a lot of things that we can really tap into. And it's just really exciting and kind of crazy that someone who looks like me and someone with my background is able to be a part of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I hear that because it's such a niche culture, just, subgenre of the cannabis culture is this death row. And, yes, an actuary, brainiac, as being a part of it, you just wouldn't, a female, an Asian female, how did that even, it's just beautiful how life happens. And when you just put yourself in the flow of it and you're open to opportunities and, you just follow the flow.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Liz, because about a year ago, so I'll tell you this, 2.5 years ago, I gave birth to my daughter. And then about 2 years ago, so 6 months after that, Snoop actually hit me up and he was like, hey, I would like for you to come back and work for me. Cause I had taken a time off and then I ended up quitting, cause I wanted to spend some time with my daughter and then I tried something else that I was really interested in, at a startup. And then at that time he hit me up and he was like, I'd really like for you to come back. And it was extremely flattering, right? To have like mega superstar like text you and be like, hey, and here I am being like, I literally just started another gig and they want me to stay for a year. Maybe I can do something for you on the side. And, soon after he was like, nope, I need you full time. I need you to come over. We're going to work this out. And there was a little bit of, within the team that he already had, there was someone that didn't necessarily want me on because I'm not sure if it was that he thought I was competition or that I would expose certain things that he was doing that I didn't think were healthy for my client. Mm-hmm. But it ended up coming to light and, Snoop worked through it with me and realized what had happened. And so he did bring me back on full time to work for him and work through everything that was going on with this other guy.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you both still on the team?
I am. I would say that he's not. I feel very,
I'm sorry, I'm meanie. I asked that because I think I knew the answer.
I don't feel great saying that because that's not at all what I ever want to do. But I think in putting me and cornering me and, if when an animal's in a corner, what are they going to do? Right. Like I didn't need this job. And so I spoke with Snoop and I was like, I don't need to come over. Right. So, yeah. And he got wind of it and he was just like, I don't like what he's saying. I'm telling you that this is what's happening. And I was like, okay, great. So, I trust that. I trust Snoop. He trusts me. And that's kind of, I don't know if this story is very clear because I'm not getting views of like what.
That's okay. It is no, it is clear and it is valuable because we don't talk about conflict in the workplace enough as women. And it is just necessary. It happens. And if you are a woman who's high achieving, you're probably working around mostly men, unless you work for WANA, in which case it's like heaven, executive leadership. These amazing women. But yeah, I appreciate the story and just even little bits and pieces, just, I don't know, just helpful. And
it is like with Snoop, I just really enjoy seeing the team that he's built around himself. And this is not cannabis, right? Like one of his closest managers / advisors is an Indian woman. His other white man. And then he's got he's got Black guys, Black women, Asian women. He's got Hispanic dudes. Like they're just, it runs the entire rainbow, just men and women equally. I would say truly 50% of his like managers or board, right, are all these women and men. And incredible. He just sees talent. He doesn't care what you look like or how you talk, as long as you can work for him and get things done. And then he can trust you, then that's all that matters. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, it feels like you put the right person in charge of this incredibly powerful brand of Death Row Cannabis. The two things are synonymous, Death Row Records and cannabis. So I cannot freaking wait to see how just all the products that come out this year and just into the future, and just follow all of the exciting news, because I know it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. We're definitely, I know we've released our multi-pack of pre-rolls, and then again, that 2-gram infused glass tip pre-roll. Like, I smoke glass, but my husband and I couldn't even finish one in one night. Like, we had to wait the next night.
That's like,
That's how amazing it was. It was very, very, very good. Yeah.
and it's in the California market, Southern California.
Yeah. If you go to any of the cookie stores, you could definitely pick them up, though I hope they haven't sold out, but we'll figure out how to get you something. We might have to have you go to the store, but we'll have the bag for you, so you can come up with care. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If you're talking to me, I'm going to buy a plane ticket and fly to LA tomorrow to pick up my bag. Okay. So we're going to stay. I'm based in Texas.
Oh, we're in Texas.
Yeah, right outside of Austin. So, so Central Texas. And the purpose, I think I mentioned earlier in our conversation, I have a production company focused in cannabis. We work with brands and help them with broadcast quality video content, commercials, and brand stories and things. Yeah. And I love doing it from Texas because we don't have legal cannabis here, and we are fighting every day. And it's just like, I feel like I'm doing a lot of good here in this state. Do you know what I mean? Like, opening up the conversation and letting, my people understand that there's a whole world out there where this medicine is natural and you could grow it yourself. And, and so we get people voting in the right way. So
I hope so. And Austin's definitely one of the best places in Texas to affect the change, because like, you're around so many like-minded people.
Yeah.
My parents live in Dallas. So my dad's like a professor at UT Dallas. And I've tried it as they've aged, and they tell me, sleep is hard to come by, or I have pain in my elbows or knees or ankles. I tell them to try cannabis or, a CBD cream and all those things. And they immediately are like, oh, it's illegal. I can't do it here. If I go to California, maybe, but I just can't do it here. And I'm like, it's frustrating because they're like 65, right? They're not old or anything, but they're all not as spry as like a 40-year-old or whatever else. And I want to help them, right? Like, I want to see these people who used to be very anti-cannabis, anti-drugs of any kind, start using it as medicine and really incorporating it into their lives to better themselves and ease certain ailments. So, I'm glad that you're doing that in Texas. Keep up the good fight. Yeah. I'm
so grateful for your time, Tiffany. You are, this is just an incredible conversation. I feel really grateful as a fan, of Death Row Records and Snoop, and now, of course, you, just to be having this conversation. So I appreciate it. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but I have to ask you the Feminized 3. Okay. These are the same 3 questions I ask all of my guests, because I always love the answers. So first question is, tell me who is in your dream smoke circle. 3 people, dead or alive, and they can be cartoons or fictitious characters if you like. And I think it's just funny that I'm asking you, because so many ladies say Snoop. Yeah. Probably 1 out of 5 say Snoop.
Yeah, sure. I would say, oh man, this is bad because I know you've sent me these questions, so I know you'll edit this so that it's tighter.
It's good. Yeah. You're good.
It's not silly because I've met her, but I would love to smoke with Martha Stewart. She's I think she's like 81 and she looks like she's 50. I need to know her secrets, and I think they will only come out of her if she's high, and I'm like pulling them out of her. Like this. And I know that he's only 11 or 12 years old, but I would love to smoke with Cartman from Zetner.
Yeah.
Why he is the way he is. He is just a terrible, terrible child. And then third, I said this when I was on Cannabis Talk 101 with Blue and Joe Grande. There's this podcast called Behind the Bastards, and basically they talk about a really terrible person in history, like Hitler or Stalin or whoever, right? And go into these random facts you don't know about that person. So, for example, Hitler had a crazy case of medical flatulence. Like, he just farted all the time. Really weird, right? So I think one of them, because I'm Chinese.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I know, right? So that's probably why he did all, I don't know, ski.
Yeah.
I would love to smoke with Mao, the chairman Mao from China, because he did terrible, terrible things. But I know that he was doing it because he thought was best for the nation at the time. But like, he's not a dumb person, and I just really want to know that he killed more people than Hitler and Stalin combined, and people don't know that. And so that's what we want to pick his brain and see what that was all about. So those are my three. One's fictional, one's dead, and one's still alive. So yeah.
Oh, incredible. God, that's a good one. Of course, Snoop's, business partner in cannabis would have the most primo smoke circle. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so question number 2 is, which women in cannabis are inspiring you right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I have to say, okay, these are all women that I know pretty well, but I also just am so impressed by all of them. There's this woman named Lisa Haroon, and she started this medical vaping device called Vapium. She's based in Canada, and then she ended up selling the company or it got acquired or merged with Granco Science. So she's now the CMO at Granco Science.
Oh,
And she is doing amazing things with all of their groundbreaking technology. She's definitely someone that I think is like, got to watch out for her. And then I have a circle of ladies that I have a friendship with, but also, we talk about industry news and everything. And it's great because the 4 of us all represent, I would say, like a different decade, right? So there's Ophelia Chong, which I'm sure you know who she is, Angela Dunning, and Carolyn Ye. So they all have crazy reputations about their work in either advocacy or branding or CPG products and marketing. So it's a really great mix of operators and women that have different points of view. And then there's, in our group, there's a woman in her 30s, a woman in her 40s, a woman in her 50s, and a woman in her 60s. So it's like really great for all 4 of us to get those perspectives together.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. Talk about a valuable, like, brain trust.
Yes. And I love those ladies so much. We try to get together at least once a month, and we have like funny jokes about being Chinese and like, relationship. Yeah. So it's just really fun to have those conversations. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Good for you. You need that support. It's lonely at the top. Isn't that what they say?
No.
And having that support is just a beautiful thing. Okay, so question number 3, Tiffany, is, tell me what advice you have for 13-year-old Tiffany.
I would say things will all work out in the end, and if they don't, it's not the end. And I know that's a cliche. I mean, I'm still relatively young. Still much more for me to do in or out of the cannabis space, in or out of the entertainment space. I think 13-year-old Tiffany, and even, a couple years older than that, was really concerned about career trajectories and understanding where I fit into the world. And, I wouldn't say that I was a straight-laced kid, but I was definitely a nerd, right? Like I was a band geek. I did Model UN. I played like a lot of sports. Like I was just that extracurricular obsessive person, right? And one of those people that just didn't really study, but still got A's and B's, right? And so it was, it got to a point where I was just like, I don't know what I want to do in my professional career. And all that stuff doesn't interest me because there's not a wide variety of things I could be doing like I'm doing now in high school or college. So I find that what I'm doing now is definitely a smattering of a bunch of different things I love and like, and maybe don't like as much, right? But all those things together really round out what I'm doing now. So I would say to her, things are going to be great, and don't worry about what anyone says, especially your parents. Yes.
Oh, great advice.
Yeah.
Feels today. Oh, God, Tiffany, I absolutely loved this conversation, and I would love to have you back on for updates.
I don't say this to like everyone, but if you want to just be friends, like if you want to just like chat and like just catch up once a month or just just be connected. I want to work with other, people, but also specifically women and in this space. And you are doing amazing work, because I'm not the person that likes to go out there and like tell people about what I'm doing. But for you to highlight the stories around all these women who are doing different things, but also affecting enough change in a space that needs more attention as well. I just like, that's great. Like not all these women are going to be tearing themselves to go out there. So
Yeah. They don't have time. You guys don't have time. That's what I say. Like, you don't have time to promote yourselves because you're too busy doing the damn thing. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'm taking you up on that.
okay, really just text me. We're all good. Yeah.
I will. I love it. Oh, thanks so much, Tiffany. And thank you today for joining us on the Feminized podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you like this conversation today, please feel free to subscribe, comment, and let me know who else you would love to hear from on the show. And if you subscribe, you'll never miss that episode. So just go ahead and do that. Just go ahead and click. But guys, thanks so much again. And until next time, smoke weed every day. You ever did? I had to do it. I had to do it.
Bye.
If you'd like more, subscribe to the Feminized podcast on YouTube. Follow at Feminized with Liz Grow on Instagram. Special thanks to our sponsors Moose Labs and Richard's Rainwater. The Feminized podcast is a Grow House Media production, created by Liz Grow, produced by Patrick Pope and Dennis Ray, with original theme music and audio mixing by Q at Q to King Productions in New Braunfels, Texas.